Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 252, cover dated mid-November 1989. So this is an interesting cover here, penciled by Jim Lee and inks by Bill Sienkiewicz. And it's a fairly restrained ink job by Sienkiewicz compared to maybe what he might do on other occasions. And an interesting choice for the cover as well. So no X-Men on the cover except in the top left-hand corner box. But we've got Donald Pierce, we've got Lady Deathstrike, and we've got Bonebreaker of the Reavers. And then these three cybernetic, as it turns out, dingoes that we get a little bit more information on the inside. Hunter-killers, Pierce calls them on the inside. So just an interesting choice. No X-Men on the cover. It feels like something that wouldn't have happened in the Jim Shooter era, but gives a little indication of some of the freedom that creatives had in the Tom DeFalco era at the end of the 80s. So let's open this one up. It follows on from the conclusion of the previous issue, where Wolverine had freed himself from being crucified on the scaffold in the outback town, which has now been taken over again by the Reavers. And Donald Pierce is mightily upset and asks, "Where's Wolverine?" which gives us the title of the story here. So the creative team is Chris Claremont, writer as ever, Rick Leonardi returning as guest penciler. The last time we saw him on the book was Uncanny X-Men 237, one of the Genosha issues. And we've got Kent Williams as guest inker, so that's an interesting choice of inker for Leonardi. I'm not quite sure what I make of this particular collaboration. I rather liked when Leonardi was paired with Dan Green and when he was paired with P. Craig Russell. This is interesting. This is quite a Sienkiewicz-like ink job on Leonardi. So let's go through this issue. Oh yeah, and just to mention that Glynis Oliver is colorist almost as always, and Tom Orzechowski on letters. So Pierce is not happy at the disappearance of Wolverine, and we have all the Reavers here and Lady Deathstrike witnessing the empty scaffold. So Pierce throws something of a tantrum, throwing the scaffold at the Reavers. In annoyance, Lady Deathstrike parries it, and then she says to him, she rebukes him, "Such a display is unseemly in a leader of men," and he's upset by that, grabs her by the neck, but then there's this weird chemistry between the two, where Pierce says that he admires her courage and spirit, and then moves in for a kiss. And then he orders the other Reavers to hunt down Wolverine, find wherever he has gone to ground, or he will destroy them, is the threat he makes. But Lady Deathstrike shows Pierce that she's someone who can always give better than she gets when she pulls him off her and throws him to the ground. So she has her own purpose as part of the Reavers group. Of course, she is determined to kill Wolverine in order to uphold the honor of her family, and in particular her father, because she's of the belief that Wolverine personally stole the secrets of bonding adamantium to skeleton, to bone, which was invented by her father. So then we get a scene of the Reavers going through the town, checking the buildings. We've got Reese, Cole, and Mac on here, heading into this particular building and finding it empty. We've got a bit of banter going on between them, and we've got Wolverine, or not Wolverine, but Jubilee observing them and observing the food that turns up, and then she bags it up, and she makes her way through the vents and tunnels under the town. So there's a vast complex of tunnels under the town, and down amongst the tunnels she has her hidey-hole, where she has brought the gravely injured Wolverine while he's recuperating and recovering from his exposure to the elements and his being crucified by Pierce in the previous issue. And en route back to her hiding place, she goes past Pierce, who almost senses her, but misses her. And interesting characterization here by Claremont. So Claremont's characterization of Jubilee is that she's got a big mouth. She talks big, but really she is young. She's a young teenage girl, and she's incredibly frightened at the situation she finds herself in. And so here we get that particularly expressed in this panel on this page. Please don't look, please go away, don't do anything to make him notice. Heart beating so fast, so loud. How can he not notice? Please, 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 please pass me by, she thinks. So, and he does. And as I said, she makes her way back to the room in which she has brought Wolverine. And this is reminiscent of Newt's hidey-hole a little bit in James Cameron's Aliens, and there's some references by Rees, Macon and Cole to 1980s action movies in the earlier pages. So it seems to be a little bit on Claremont's mind for this particular issue. There's a little bit of a kind of a suspense action movie vibe to this particular issue of the X-Men as well. So we get some information from what Jubilee says, that Wolverine is smelling bad down here from his wounds. There's an implication maybe that he's soiled himself even as well, which is quite grim, but it really indicates what a bad situation he is in, as well as his hallucinations of Carol Danvers and subsequently Nick Fury. So Carol says to him when he asks her, "Am I dead? Ornery cuss like you, Logan. Fat flaming chance." And she says to him, "Oh chum, when you make enemies, you sure don't fool around." So he's still hallucinating, still feverish after his treatment in the previous issue. Here comes Nick Fury, another one of his hallucinations, and the two of them basically dialogue with Wolverine. He grabs Jubilee in his confusion, and both Nick and Carol berate him and tell him to listen to them. The girl's trying to save your life. And interesting, the hallucination of Carol and Nick. Again, it's implying, Claremont here is implying something about Logan's mysterious past and some kind of special ops team that he was part of, and that was run by Nick Fury, obviously. And he addresses Nick Fury as Sergeant Fury here, not Colonel Fury. And so that kind of places the chronology of his engagement with Fury and Carol Danvers around World War II. And we're going to see that picked up in Uncanny X-Men 268, which also happens to be, that's the one in which we get the first encounter between Wolverine and Captain America during World War II. And there's a video on that issue on the channel if you'd like to check that out. And that's the last time also that we see these hallucinations of Nick and Carol in the present day portion of the story, because Uncanny X-Men 268 has a double timeline. Part of the story is in the present, and there's a counterpoint narrative set during World War II. Okay, so Wolverine pops his claws on Jubilee in his confusion, and she reacts with her fireworks display, which kind of shakes some sense into him a little bit. And then we switch to Pierce and Bonebreaker, who are down in the computer center of the town. And Bonebreaker is trying to use the computer systems to track Wolverine, even though he makes the point, which readers know at this point, that the X-Men are invisible to regular technology, but for some reason the computer system of the town is able to pick them up, and but it is not it's not working 100%, and the scene switches to Wolverine's room in the town with Pretty Boy inside and Lady Deathstrike approaching down the hall. And this is an interesting little scene here between Pretty Boy and Deathstrike, and Pretty Boy has been true to his nature, odiously trying to charm and seduce Deathstrike, who's having none of it, and he uses his cybernetic power, these fiber optic wires that emerge from his eyes, and that when they connect with the victim, rewrite the psyche of the victim. But Deathstrike uses her claws to break the connection, and she basically trashes Pretty Boy. And the whole reason for her treatment of him is that he has put his hands on the honor sword of Clan Yashida, and Mariko is Wolverine's ex-fiancé, and he is the one who possesses the sword currently, and as Deathstrike says, none may wield it but the lord of the clan or its champion, and so Wolverine is the current champion of the clan, and she says that she can wield it because she's noble born to a house as old and respected as the Yashidas, but Pretty Boy is less than nothing and will not touch this blade again. So then we switch back to Pierce and Bonebreaker in the computer center, and Bonebreaker has realized that the system's different. There's a whole new network, he says to Pierce, written in a language I don't speak. Basic configurations evolving, almost as if the blamed computer's growing. X-Men may have modified things. There's evidence of the repair routines at work, indications of major damage to the primary CPU, but some of these elements, I swear, they look less like technology than living organisms. So that is, again, a further development of a mystery concerning the town's computer systems that was alive when the X-Men were resident there. And now we're learning that even the Reavers, even Bonebreaker here, doesn't quite know what's going on with the town's computer system. And this is a mystery that is never resolved by Claremont, given his departure from the X-Books in 1991. So it's a real shame, but it seems to be moving towards some kind of climax whereby there might be a revelation that the computer system is alive, is sentient, something like Skynet maybe from the Terminator movies, because of course the Reavers are a little bit reminiscent of the Terminator movies in some regards, and most especially these new creations of Pierce's. These are cybernetic dingoes that he calls hunter-killers, just like the Terminators are hunter-killers. And he's setting them on the trail of Wolverine. Then we get back to Jubilee, Wolverine, and as it turns out here, Gateway. And I just want to note the colouring on this page by Glynis Oliver. It really evokes the Twilight colours of the Outback Desert. Really nicely done here on this particular page. And we have both Wolverine and Gateway sitting over a fire that isn't burning in silence as Jubilee circles around them, soliloquizing her frustration about them and how they're ignoring her, and basically crying out, "This is not fun, you know, might as well be talking to myself," which he has been. So what happens then is that it suddenly becomes night time. "Hey, where'd the sun go?" she asks. "Is it night already? Wow, nice stars." Don't see him like this back in La La Land. Too much smog. And then the fire lights independently, and then she gets frightened when Gateway has disappeared, and she asks Wolverine, "Where's Mr. Gateway?" "He's out of the picture," says Wolverine. "It's just you and me, kid." "The heck you say?" And she lets rip with her fireworks. But what has happened here, what it turns out, is they were in the dream time, and as Wolverine says here, dream time's done. We're back in the real world. So again, interesting what was going on there, because Gateway appears to have left the town. He's no longer sitting atop the hill. He's no longer a guardian of the sacred place. He's abandoned it. So Wolverine was communing with him in the dream time, but to what end, what purpose, we don't know. It's as mysterious to us as it is to Jubilee. But Wolverine breaks out of the dream time because he senses Pierce's Reavers are hunting. And the fact that he perceives them is an indication that he is continuing to heal in this issue. So then we pick up with Pierce and his cybernetic dingoes, and all the Reavers, including Lady Deathstrike, going down into the tunnel complexes and going after Wolverine. And we have this little moment here between Deathstrike and Pierce, where he's offering her one of the cyborg dingoes. She refuses it, and he asks her, "So, Lady Deathstrike, you truly believe you're a match for Wolverine?" "Why is it you are so concerned, Lord?" She responds, "Could it be you who are afraid?" Which gives him something to think about. Again, just a note here about Kent Williams' inking of the dingoes. Look, they're just in silhouette, and look at the ink spatter here. Interesting choice again in terms of the combination of Leonardi and Kent Williams. And look at the inking up here as well. This reminds me very much of Frank Miller around this period. The last issue in particular of Dark Knight Returns, where he corrected Klaus Janssen's art with his own style, this kind of blocky inking here. You see it in that 4th issue of Dark Knight Returns. So some evidence here of the kind of artistic aesthetic of the late 80s and all the different confluences of influences showing up in the art here. And it makes for a striking page. Color, pencils, inks, it's kinetic, it's interesting. Okay, so let's continue with the story here. And again, this is very reminiscent of Aliens in particular, going through these tunnel systems, the hide and seek that's going on. It evokes it for me. So Wolverine, wearing his costume for some reason here, is observing what's going on, and then we have a screw up by the Reavers, whereby they blow a hole in the roof of the complex under the lake, the town's lake. So the tunnels become flooded with the water from the lake, and Lady Deathstrike is dismissive of them in terms of being fools. Have they forgotten it is the wounded foe who is ever the most dangerous? Serve them right for taking Wolverine for granted. The way to find him is to think like him, or perhaps like the person helping him. So Lady Deathstrike is on an altogether different level of intelligence from the Reavers or Pierce, a smarter antagonist for Logan, and also one for whom honor is a paramount value. And so she brings the clan Yashida sword with her and deposits it in Jubilee's room, and thinks the Yashida blade should be safe here until Wolverine returns to claim it upon my death, or I do upon his. So an interesting little moment here regarding Deathstrike and her particular attitude to Wolverine and her part in this hunt. And something that should be noted now is that that duel between Wolverine and Deathstrike that we saw back in Uncanny X-Men 205, which is also an intertext for this particular issue, it never happens in this issue. They never do face off in this issue. So Wolverine very easily takes care of, dispatches Pierce's cybernetic dingoes, and taunts Pierce. Any more toys, Pierce? He asks him. And then we get this posturing here where Pierce says to him, "Nobody mocks me, Muty, especially you. Then do something about it, bub. Of course I should warn you, I ain't working alone." And then Jubilee hits him with her plasma bursts, fireworks from behind, which takes him out of action, and she assists Wolverine to limp away from the rubble covering Pierce, and she asks him, "Can you make it on your own?" And he says, "I can try. What the heck, I got nothing better to do than to help him. But you got to do something about this macho attitude. I mean, it is like so lame." So interesting foreshadowing of Claremont's treatment of Wolverine all the way to the end of his run, where Wolverine from this point forward is vulnerable, is weakened, his healing factor isn't operating optimally, and it all has to do with Claremont's long-term vision for the 50 issues to number 300, where it was his plan in around issue 280 or so, the 280s, to kill Wolverine, or to have Wolverine be killed on account of this new vulnerability. Who knows, maybe by Lady Deathstrike. And then that his body would be resurrected by the Hand, and he would be an antagonist for the X-Men, a brainwashed Hand assassin, and that he would break free of that conditioning in time for the 300 issue of the series. So interesting to consider that alternative narrative arc of Claremont's that unfortunately got abandoned by virtue of Claremont quitting the books out of disgust with editorial back in 1991. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on this particular issue, Uncanny X-Men 252. And if you did, please like the video. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.